Welcome everyone to Guy and Helmer Unfiltered but Kind of Filtered. I'm your host Alex Helmer, bringing you more cinema-related content. Now, with me is not my usual co-host Guy. An old guy was feeling a bit under the weather today. He couldn't make it, unfortunately. He sends his apologies. But with me is the creator of Agnolo Movies blog. You love him from the League of Cinephiles. It's Agnolo himself. Agnolo, how are you doing today?
All fine, all great. Happy to be here to talk with Sean and you.
Great to have you. And with us, we have a very, very special guest. He is the man who talks movies way too much, the rankings guy. He is a Rotten Tomatoes certified critic, a public speaker, and of course, the creator of Sean Chandler Talks About. It's Sean Chandler himself. Sean, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Excited to talk movies and YouTube.
Great to have you. I mean, I've been a big admirer of your channel for a very long time. When I first got involved in the community, first got involved into movies, it was you and John Campia, and that's about it for YouTube movie critics. Sorry, what were you going to say?
John Campia was one of the big inspirations for me starting. I was watching him for about 4 or 5 years, and I went, hey, if this guy can do it, I could do that too. And then I realized it's a little bit more difficult than that, but eventually I had some success. So yeah, but he was probably the primary reason that I started.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I mean, it's great to have you. So for those watching, we're just going to talk about Sean's channel for a bit. We're going to go through kind of a quick Q&A. On Instagram, I posted a quick Q&A, so you all sent some questions in that we'll kind of ask Sean, and then we'll go through our usual movie news at the end of the show. So Sean, I'm just going to, let's get started. Let's rewind the clock a bit. So we're all here because we love movies, because we're all cinephiles. So where did your love of movies originate? How did you get in love? How did you become in love with movies? How did you get to a place now that, your job is, talking about movies?
Well, I don't know. Just as far back as I remember, I always just kind of like nerdy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
One of my earliest memories of the movies was summer 1989 when Batman 89 came out. And so that was just a huge deal. I remember growing up just always watching the Christopher Reeve Superman movies, and then we're going to get a Batman movie. And so I collected all the trading cards that went along with both Batman and Batman Returns. And that same summer, Star Trek V came out, which is not the best movie out there, but I had a very fond memory of, we were doing like a cross-country road trip from Texas to California. We stopped in this very small little town in Arizona or New Mexico. I always forget. My sister has to remind me which one it was, and she always does in the comments whenever I tell the story. And they had a theater that had a balcony on it. It was a one-screen theater with a balcony and everything. And they were showing Star Trek V, and we went to go see it. And if they didn't sell 20 tickets, they wouldn't show the movie. And so we were some of the first people in the movie. And so we're like in there like counting as everybody walked in. Like, are we going to get to 20? Are we going to get to watch the movie? And then I don't even know when Star Trek became this huge part of my family's life, but my sister and mom got really into it, especially around when Star Trek 6 came out, and we started going to Star Trek conventions all throughout the 90s. And, Star Trek convention is basically, Comic Cons became all-encompassing cons for all nerdy stuff, but they were much more niche back in the day. So it was the same exact thing as a Comic Con, but it was just only about Star Trek. That's what I did in the 90s. I went to a bunch of those. And somewhere in there, I just started enjoying that sort of thing. I'd stay up late watching R-rated movies after my parents went to bed on cable TV, and it's kind of something like that. There's kind of always a part of my life and collecting nerdy stuff. And my sister and I would ride our bikes to the comic shop. When I was in the third grade, a comic store called Sean's Comics, but he spelled his name wrong, opened up a few miles from my house, and the guy came in. He did like career day or something at my school. I was like, oh, there's a comic shop near my house. And it's interesting because now that I think about it, it was like 4 miles from my house, and I'm in elementary school and ride my bike to the store with my sister. I can't imagine ever letting my kids ride their bike as far as my sister and I going to this comic shop. How times have changed since I was growing up. But that's what we would do every Saturday, was we would ride our bikes up to this comic shop, and my sister would read them because she's literate, and I would look at the pictures because I'm stupid. And yeah, it's just that. I was just always into this kind of thing, and always a kind of person that went to the internet to kind of track rumors on stuff. So, when I was growing up, that was like, wait, they're going to do a new Star Wars movie? George is going to do prequels, a Star Wars movie? And he's kind of obsessed over it. And I remember when the trailer came out, and that's one of the first ones I remember downloading it. And this would have been, 240 would have been high res back then, and you would spend hours and hours downloading it just to watch this trailer, super poor quality. And but yeah, that's this is kind of always what I was into. And then I started kind of creating things back in the late 90s. I had a Jackie Chan fan page. I was on a bunch of comment sections for different things. And then in like 2013, after watching John Campea for a few years, was like, hey, I can do this too. And turned out it was a lot more difficult than I thought. And it took about 3 years for it to actually get going, really. So 2016 is when I started my channel properly.
Of course.
Cool.
And so that kind of leads me into my next question, which was, when you first started your channel, what were you expecting from it? What were you expecting to gain out of it? Were you expecting to build, as big of a community as you have? What were kind of your goals when you first started?
Well, I expected I was going to quit after 2 weeks because that's what I had done for the last 15 years. As I said, 2016 I start, but I started 3 years before that. Sometimes people will correct me whenever I tell the story of Sean Chandler Talks About, the official name of my channel, and be like, yeah, Sean
your
Chandler.
Own channel.
Yeah, I'll say like Sean Chandler started in July of 2016. They go, actually, your channel started in 2013. It's like, do you think you know better than me? Like, do you think I forgot? Like, what? Like, oh yeah, that happened. I mean, and so it's just the same channel. The channel itself is actually called Kirk Never Died. That was my username I just picked in 2012 to comment on YouTube. And it's a Star Trek reference. Star Trek is a recurring theme in this. And a week ago today, I actually got my picture taken with William Shatner as my proof that Kirk never died.
Yeah, I saw
but
that,
my channel's actually called Kirk Never Died when it was first started. And I just posted some things on it before I actually started Sean Chandler Talks About and came up with that name in 2016. But so I assumed it would be like every other time, and I'd post for a couple weeks and then I would stop. Because I just didn't have a history of sticking with it. And I think anyone that starts a YouTube channel probably has some aspiration. They have some tickle in their brain. They have some dream that, man, I think I can do that and I'll be really good at it. And I think we all watch some of our stuff and we think, man, I'm awesome. I'm going to take off. I think we all kind of have some amount of that. Different people have different degrees of delusion in that, and different people.
Yeah, I think I'm one of those people.
And when I started, I had the advantage of having worked at a church, and so I spoke publicly to middle schoolers for over 10 years straight. And if you could hold the attention of middle schoolers, you could hold for 30 minutes. You could hold the attention on the internet for 5 minutes reviewing a movie. So I had some advantages, but also if you watch my early stuff, it was as rough as most other people's early things. And so I of course had those dreams. I had those thoughts. My channel kind of started out of a pretty dark period in my life where I was very much trying to figure what am I going to do for my future and struggling through a lot of stuff in my personal life. And even before that, even before my real struggles started to come into play, someone asked me like, hey, if you could do anything full time, what would you want to do? And I didn't have a vision for this, but I said, I'd love to be a full-time content creator for myself. And I wasn't even thinking specifically YouTube, but I was thinking whether writing, YouTube, something where I work for myself with ideas, because I know I'm self-motivated, and I like at the end of the day to be able to go, I created this, it's there, it's out there, and I'm seeing some results, and it comes back to me. Did I come up with a good enough idea? Did I create? I always liked that sort of thing, and not having to worry about everything that comes with an actual job. So that was 2 years before I started my channel, and so I always had that thought in my head. And even in this time period, this is an actual thing that happened. Because I had worked in church world, that came to a hard end, and I wasn't going to be going back to that anytime soon. And I started my channel. I didn't have a job, and the only job I was able to get right around the exact point in time where I started my channel was delivering paint.
Yeah.
I graduated from college with high honors. I don't want to speak down to paint delivery, but it's manual labor. It's, can you pass a drug test? Can you park a large truck without crashing it? And are you able to carry buckets of paint? It's like all of my degrees, all of my resume, I wasn't using any of that. And so after I got the job, which meant I passed a drug test and could drive a car, it's literally what it entailed. I went home and I had a conversation with my wife, and I said to her, like, if this doesn't lead to something, if I'm not able to use this window where I'm not using my brain at work for something, I don't know what I'm going to do. Like I don't know if I'm gonna make it. And it was like this moment. It was this very strange moment of like I didn't like I knew I wanted to turn it into something. And it was kind of this dramatic. It's kind of funny because like I went up and like even put on like I'd been done other job interviews at much fancier places. So I went into a paint store dressed up nice. Like I bought new shoes and everything. And I walk in and everyone's covered in paint. And I'm like I have dramatically misread the moment. It was just like in a lot of ways, a very humbling moment. I was like, if I can't use this as an opportunity, if this doesn't turn into something, I don't know how I'm going to go forward. Like, it was kind of a desperate thought in my brain. And it's something I actually said that. And the reality was, if I'd had a real job where I used my brain, I couldn't have grown my YouTube channel. Like the fact that I had a job that when I got off every day, I was like, I want to go create something. Okay, I've been carrying stuff all day. I want to go create something. That's the reason I was able to grow it. And so that opportunity, this moment that seemed like a moment of despair turned out to be the setup really for this entire career that I have, which is kind of cool the way it worked out. Very humbling, not very pleasant at the time, but pretty amazing how it worked out.
Of course. And so kind of fast forwarding now to the present, we're finally here, right? I just wanted to ask you quickly about, so whenever I mention you to one of my fellow cinephiles or to just even kind of a normal person on the street who watches YouTube, and I say the name Sean Chandler, they'll be like, oh, the ranking guy. So just that concept in general of ranking things. Of course, I've heard about kind of from a view standpoint, why you kind of continued the trend of making ranking videos. But why do you think from an audience point of view, why they enjoy those types of videos, why we enjoy kind of watching a guy sitting down, ranking his favorite movies, ranking his favorite MCU villains, stuff of that nature? Why do you think people gravitate towards that so much?
Well, because it's comparative language in it with a lot of different things. So it's highly consumable. And with the whole franchise, with all the actors, whatever the category of things that you're ranking, you there's just something that tickles in your brain of like, I wonder where he's going to put this one. And so, I mean, kind of the reason I started doing rankings is I was reading Collider.com, the blog before Collider turned into the Movie Talk channel.
Yeah.
And they would do rankings. And like I would read them, and they do have different writers. Their names are on there, and if you're around there long enough, you start to know the different writers over there. But also the inherent nature of a blog with multiple writers for it is that it inherently feels like Collider is ranking this rather than an individual person. And so I was interested in them, and I would click on them a lot and look at them, and I'd get mad and I'd get worked up. You always get worked up when you watch someone else's ranking. And the thought somewhat was like, what if I like the idea of this. Like the way that this makes me feel when I look at theirs, that it actually stirs something up. It's just a bunch of mini reviews stacked next to each other, but because of the comparative language, it just immediately it pulls. I'm agreeing, I'm disagreeing, and it just creates that conversation in your head and your feelings. And so I wanted to do a personal version of that. Like, there's also like Looper out there, or these other channels that kind of do ranking, but once again, they're generic brands.
Yeah.
And that's not as interesting as a person that has specific opinions that you can start to align with. Like, what does Looper like? Well, Looper's not a person. And what does Collider like? Well, Collider's not a person. And once again, that they are written by someone, but when you click on it, you're not seeing the name of you're not immediately looking at the name of the person. It's not quite like that. Or even sometimes that they would do that. They do their end of the year, best of the year list. And you'd be like, oh, let's see how their different people ranked these.
Yeah.
That was the idea. And it's just that kind of fun language of comparison that immediately starts a conversation. And to the language of my channel from the very beginning, which Sean Chandler talks about, the whole idea was it's conversational. I'm talking about something, and then you respond back in the comment section. All of my language of inclusiveness is always, in my calls to action, has always been about join me down below in the comment section.
Of course.
And then the current version is my list isn't the right list, it's just my list, and I would love to see yours. But I had different versions of that going all the way back to the beginning. But the whole point was, here's what I said, now what do you say? Like, I'm not giving you the definitive answer. In comparative language, a list is very easy to share your version right back.
Of course. And so I'm going to go over to my co-host, Agnolo. Now, Agnolo's been a content creator in the film Instagram community for a long time, a lot longer than I had. So, Agnolo, you had a few questions for Sean?
Yeah, it's just about what you were talking now. Like, how do you get a lot of people like kicking off because of your list? Do you think that's getting worse, or are people like still taking it as your personal opinion and respecting how is that going now compared with when you started?
So when I started, I think for the most part people are pretty reasonable because they're when they really believe that you're going to read their comment, they filter themselves a little bit more. And then whenever I first had it, my first videos that started to take off, and it was no longer in the tens, it was no longer in the hundreds, but you have a couple videos take off and you get 10,000 people viewing it for the very first time. You get a lot of people that have never watched your videos before, and they're pretty mean a lot of the time. I don't remember. I think I did like a trailer reaction or something for Transformers: The Last Night.
Oh God.
High cinema right there. And you watch the trailer, and we're at the fifth, sixth movie. They're Michael Bay movies. They're lots, and I enjoy good, fun, dumb Michael Bay. I had plenty of fun with it, but this is not high cinema. And there's lots of shots of girls leaning over vehicles in skimpy dresses, and you know what you're getting into. And you're watching the Last Night trailer, and they start having a guy holding a Nazi flag, and you're like, come on, are we really we're bringing in the Nazis? I'm not sure that you're the right franchise to be able to delicately touch on the most atrocious thing in human history. I'm not quite sure that let's bring the Autobots to the battle against the Nazis. Really, is that where we're going with this? And so, I was kind of not so nice in my trailer reaction. And then all these people come out of the blue that apparently are defenders of the hierarchy
of all the movies.
Of all the movies, really? You want the Decepticons as the actual driving force of the Nazis? Do you realize that's actually offensive? I'm not taking these too seriously, but come on, you got it. And so I remember that one being one of the first ones where it was well, man, people are really coming at me about Transformers. But it was that there was a bunch of new people. And so then the larger you get, I think there's a little bit more of that. But I think it also depends on the demeanor that you portray things. I think I've always tried to have a bit of a disarming nature to the way I present things. Yeah. And so if you present it, even I did a ranking of The Office episodes, or not episodes, seasons or characters. And both those two videos were gigantic hits for me. And in whichever one I did first, I didn't use my normal language. My normal language is, my list isn't the right list, it's just my list I love to see. And I repeat that because emphasizing the point is, I just want to share my ideas and talk with you about your ideas. But in that video, I said something like, oh, of course, this is my list and it's objectively the right list because my wife and I picked it. Pretty clear sarcasm. That if you actually believe that something is objectively right because my wife and I think it, you have a higher view of me than my mom does, and my mom thinks I'm the greatest. But I had a bunch of comments like, "Dude, you really think yours is the right? Dude, are you?" And I used language that was more combative, and so it brought some more of that out. And so I tried and disarm some of that, but that's what and it largely works. But there's always. I think some of it is even that people don't think I'm going to read the comment. They're just reacting with their emotion. And so I've had a lot of times where someone will come in red hot, what kind of moron has Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 at the bottom of their MCU ranking, the bottom 5? What's wrong with you, an idiot? Respond well, I'm not an idiot. The movie just didn't connect with me. And they're, oh, I'm so sorry. I was drunk last night. Oh, well. Okay. Well, thanks for now that I know what you were up to last night. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm a huge fan of your work. I don't know what I was thinking. And it's kind of interesting, when you respond to people and kill them with kindness and stuff, and they realize you actually read what they wrote. I've had a lot of people immediately respond back apologetic. Got a lot of people that double down, triple down, and so I don't. It's tough to say if it's more or less, but I heard that when you start getting over 100,000, people really stop assuming that you read the comments, and the flavor changes a little bit. I think I've seen that somewhat. I don't read my comments nearly as much as I used to. That's why I'm very active in my DMs on Instagram and very active on Twitter, because I still want to keep in contact with people. I still want to be approachable, but there's something about the comment section when there's that many people, it's just taking in too much, and you filter all the kind comments in a way that it doesn't really build you back up usually, but every mean comment still feels like a punch to the gut. And so I interact very specifically with my comment section now because it has changed a little bit. But even I'm always thinking, do I need to close down my social media even a little bit more, because more and more I'm getting just nasty stuff out of the blue. The last couple of weeks, I don't know if it was just a group of guys trolling or what, but I had a guy say like, kind of pick a fight with me over him misreading a joke whenever Nolan was announced joining Universal a couple weeks back. So I made a couple jokes on Twitter about, I guess this means we're going to finally get the proper sequel to Tokyo Drift we've all been waiting for, which is a reference to Christopher Nolan saying a year ago when Tenet came out that he has a soft spot for Tokyo Drift. So it was a joke. Like, it was just a joke that was like referencing a Christopher Nolan quote and the fact that he was joining over. The joke assumes that you have a good working knowledge of Christopher Nolan quotes from a year ago, but it was a joke. And this guy responded like red hot, like, just because you didn't like Tokyo Drift doesn't mean it doesn't have a fan base, and like, how dare you think you're the center of the world? Like, whoa, dude, I was just making a joke. And he's like, sorry, I just think I'm a little bit bitter because you used to be one of my favorite movie reviewers, and now you're just one of the worst. Like, I find you to be a joke these days. And it's I tried to respond back to him like, hey man, and it was just like so venomous. It was like the sort of thing that there's nothing healthy about. Say, hey man, I'm sorry I don't like my reviews anymore. Sorry for whatever's going on in your life that you're like lashing out at me, but hope you have a better day. He's like, oh, you think that the only reason someone might not like your videos is because there's something wrong with their home life? Like, well, no. Tons of people watch my videos and never click on another one. Every day that happens thousands of times. That's totally reasonable. I do that with channels all the time. What's not normal is being mad at someone because you don't like their reviews anymore. And so I think there absolutely is something to that, this sort of idea of like things change a little bit. And sometimes your audience changes. Sometimes there's a lot of things that kind of factor into it. Since I cover, movies about guys in cosplay and space punching CGI characters, a lot of times I attract a young audience. And as they get older, they grow up. Their cinematic preferences are more mature than mine. That's fine. I don't mind being a child in a grown-up's body. I'm totally fine with that because I can make a living doing it. But other people grow past my stuff and they discover A24, and that's awesome. But yeah, anyway, that's a very long answer that I don't know if I actually answered your question, but
No,
I guess I'm just in a chatty mood.
No, completely. The other thing is, like, people watch your video, and like you said before, it's a lot more work than you expected in the beginning. So how much, like, for a video that's like 30 minutes or it's like 5 minutes, how long do you take in preparing, doing research and all that? Or is it just easier, you just go with the flow?
On the writing side for my videos?
Yeah.
Is that what you're asking? Man, It is all over the place. It really is. I'll go into like a big Marvel ranking, and I'll spend, after I watch each movie, I'll write my notes. I rewatched Venom last night, so I sat down and just wrote notes based off the movie. And then for multiple possible different rankings, I just wrote a bunch of notes about the final battles and the characters and basically a mini review and observations and a couple of jokes. So I spent 10, 20 minutes doing that. You think a Marvel ranking with 24 movies, 20 minutes times 24 adds up quite a bit. And then I'll get, right before I film that, I'll try and do another pass on it. And like, can I write a couple more jokes in here? Can I tighten it up? Because this is going to be way too long. It's going to be way longer than I want it to be. I did like some MCU hero and villain rankings a couple weeks back. They're like 45 minutes long. I wanted them to be under 30 minutes. I wrote too much. I overwrote. I couldn't trim it enough. So I'll try and trim it. And so it'll take forever. But then other times I'll do some of these top 10s where I just know my top 10. And I know these movies because they're my top 10. So I'll go in and I'll just have a list of names. All it is a list of titles with numbers next to it. And I just hit record. And I'm nothing prepped besides that. So it really is kind of all over the place. And some of that, I think some of that's to my fault. Some of that's just the nature of my personality, that I don't like to be locked into one workflow. Some of it is I like to crank out content at a pace that's sometimes too quick. And so sometimes I just don't put in the work maybe I should. And sometimes I put in too much work and I overthink it. And I want a 25-minute video and I wrote a 50-minute video. Yeah. So, but I don't have one answer, but I use Evernote, and I'm constantly watching movies, watching TV shows, and writing my little observations in there. And then hopefully before I shoot the video, I go back and I try and what's the best stuff in there.
Mm-hmm. And just a quick question on my front. Sorry, excuse me if this question's a bit vague, but so in your videos, when you said you have those kind of joke moments, and then, sorry if I'm trying to describe this, and then you cut away to like a scene in a movie or something, or someone saying something in a movie in order to like kind of give the payoff to that joke. Do you know what are you understanding what I mean? So those kind of like those B-roll clips, do you have just kind of a collection of them on your laptop, or you're like, okay, so insert joke here and you bring that clip over?
It's exactly that. Okay. So it started with when Bill and Ted, I think, came out, is really where doing that on a more regular basis started. Yeah. It was just using Bill and Ted quotes when Bill and Ted 3 came out, because there's a new Bill and Ted. And I was like, I'd done some things like that and had some tightly edited videos back in, I think, 2018, summer 2018. And then I felt like I just kind of had drifted away, and somewhat even to like writing fewer notes and not editing quite as tight and not being as entertaining as I could try to be. And so then about a year ago, some of it was even COVID related, of like, all right, things are slow. Let me use this opportunity to try and up my game a little bit. And so then I had these 3 quotes or 2 quotes or whatever it was for Bill and Ted that I was using everything. And then I added in Iron Man saying, not a great plan. And then so I went, wait, if I'm going to keep doing this, I need a much bigger list. And so then I just, I learned like some great memes from some videos. I watched some other people to do some similar stuff, and like, what are some ones that fit my style and fit my audience? And then I went to some of my friends that are just amazing with movie quotes and this sort of thing, and I asked them. And so I just started. I have, once again, in Evernote, I have a folder file that has a list of every single one I've done, plus another 100 that I haven't pulled the clip from yet. And then I just spent an afternoon where at first I was just, every time I used one, I would take the full 3-minute clip I found on YouTube, trim the whole thing down. I was like, wait, this is stupid. Why am I doing this? Why don't I just edit this down? Instead, I spent a whole day taking all those clips and then taking the one little spot on it, doing proper compression, equalization so that it fits the sound of my videos. And so then I just had these little clips that I just insert paste into those spots.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. That was just something I was curious about. I was like, how many clips does this guy have on his laptop? Does he just come up with them on the spot? And
that's even when I'll when I watch through a franchise that has lots of quotes in it, I'll even use that, like, let me try and remember what I need to add in there. So, one of them was Austin Powers. I just watched all the Austin Powers movies, and I went through what are all the quotes in Austin Powers that could potentially work. And so then I have a stack of like about 8 Austin Powers little clips that I can start inserting in, that potentially in the next couple months you'll start to see like Austin Powers showing up in them. But I guess I don't have a number of the quotes, but if I had 2 minutes, I could actually adjust my note and tell you exactly how many are in the deal. Actually, no, I can. I have a folder. That's right.
Oh, wow. Backwards.
Here we go. So I have the folder that just has a bunch of files that are the full unrendered ones. Okay, here we go. So we are at 42 pre-rendered. 42 pre-rendered, ready to drop in. And then I have, like, literally, one of the things I was doing yesterday was working on getting more. Mm-hmm. Names of them, downloading the clips, and I just haven't rendered them. I haven't added any of those new ones in yet, but in theory I'll be adding another 20, so increasing it by about 50% in the next week or so.
Of course. And then just kind of our last topic before we move on to our Q&A. So we've talked about the past, we've talked about the present. Now in regards to the future of your channel, just quickly, just outright, where do you see your channel in 5 years? If we were to play this video in 5 years and say, hey, what did I think of myself? Did I reach my goals in 5 years? Could you give an accurate answer? Or could you give just kind of just a wild guess at what that would look like in 5 years?
Not really. It's tough to say because you think
Mm-hmm.
YouTube is only 15 years old. So 5 years from now, it's 33% older. That's a large percentage of the lifetime of YouTube. The movie space is about 10 years old. You know, the Jeremy Johns, they started about 2010,
Yeah.
29. So 10, 12 years old. So it's even a little bit 5 years younger than YouTube itself. And as like a full-time career, it's once again, it's about 9 years old, something like that you can make money. So it's tough to even know because it's such an evolving landscape. And that's even since I've gone full time, I've struggled to define what that is because part of the reason I was able to make it to full time is because I had a clear goal, clear objective. And then once you're full time, wait, I work for myself. I determine my own hours and I'm making enough money. So what are my next goals? I don't know. I've reached the top of this space unless I think I'm going to get the most subscribers, but that just feels like a pure vanity goal that doesn't increase the quality of my life in any way to try and do everything just to be the number one with most subscribers. I don't think that would increase the happiness of my life. So that's what's been the interesting one is trying to adjust my thinking of like what and try to figure out what that is. And I'm not quite sure. Specifically with my channel, I don't think it would look the same simply because if I did the same exact thing for 10 years straight, that just wouldn't be very interesting. The channel would be 10 years old and 5 years old.
Yeah.
So I think it'll be some sort of evolution of what I'm currently doing, of expanding upon it, having more different things that I'm doing and things like that. I don't know. For me, I like public speaking. I like things like that. So I would think I'd expand a little bit in that direction of coaching people more, and developing that side out of kind of my business of YouTuber expert guy.
Awesome. And I know you have a few other channels like Sean Chandler Creates as well. So, and then you have Sean Chandler, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Sean Chandler Extras as well. So you post content on those channels as well.
Yeah, I think I have 5 of them.
Yeah.
Think of so this is my Sean Chandler Talks About is the main one.
Yeah.
And if Sean Chandler Plus, that's essentially stuff that I want to talk about, but I'm not sure how well it would do on my main channel. It's kind of YouTube optimization with the algorithm of I don't want to hurt the big stuff on my main channel, so I'll have a second place where I can post things. And I started that one this year. It's kind of an experiment that it's a weird experiment to launch in the middle of a pandemic where movies are unreliable, coming out are unreliable. Then I have a vlog channel that basically I just wanted to post stuff about my personal life that I didn't want to post on my main channel. I wanted to post more things there, and it sort of turned into a family channel. And so it's like fan mail with my kids or playing video games with my kids or little vlogs. And then I have one about YouTube creation, and then I have one with my sermons.
Great. That's how you can manage all that. I have no idea.
I don't know either. I don't as well as I think I should. It's like the Real Creators one with the YouTube channel one. That was supposed to be a big priority this year, and then we got to March, and the world kind of threw me enough curveballs this year, and I just stopped. I went like 2 months straight of posting every week, and that was my goal. Life happened. Now it's been 6 months, and I haven't posted anything. And then starting tomorrow, it'll kick back up, and I'll start posting on that one weekly again, hopefully until the end of the year.
Now, I wanted to thank you for that channel because I think I've watched at least most of the videos, Sean, on that channel, your creator channel. That has been just really helpful for me as someone who's trying to create movie related content as well. But let's move on for
the next 4 or 5 Sundays. You'll be getting little clips from me and 3C talking about YouTube. So
great,
we'll get new stuff starting tomorrow.
Great. So let's move on now to our quick Q&A. We had a couple questions you guys wanted to write into Sean, so let's see if he can get some answers in. So the first one, I found this one really interesting. So have you made any films or wrote any scripts or pan on it? Of course, we've had kind of Chris Duckman, of course, who has detailed his journey, his filmmaking journey, which of course recently he was signed on to do a film. John Campia's done a similar thing with his recent documentary. Have you kind of been in that similar sphere of, hey, I've been talking about create?
Campia did a scripted film called The Anniversary back about 13 years ago.
Yes, so I heard about it. Yes, I haven't seen it, but I saw the movie trailers one. So I've never
written a full movie script. I've never done that. I've never set out to do that. I've done a lot of scripted work for like short film type stuff, not for like film festivals, but like I working in a church setting and being someone that loved movies and making videos and stuff like that. I created a lot of stuff like there for like church retreats and stuff like that. I would do these videos and stuff, and I would treat them like doing a 30-minute movie. So there's one time I wrote a 50-page script just for this deal and shot a movie out of it. It was I frequently don't know how I did some of the things I used to do, but it was basically a 50-minute movie that was like inspired by Star Wars and Inception and Dodgeball. It was like this hodgepodge of all of them together, and so I've done a lot of projects like that. And my buddies and I are. There's a girl we were friends with in high school that her and her friends wrote a script, and back when we were in college, we got bored and we decided to just make that movie. And we just shot it. And so we made it's about an hour and 15-minute long movie that we shot based off this terrible script that these girls, and that we knew that was the joke. That we were just like, let's adapt their terrible, it was like kind of like making fun of them, but then it turned into this gigantic project that we did 20 years ago. And so we've, I've done quite a few things that I try and I would share a little bit more of that stuff probably on my family vlog channel, but when you're dealing with my platform being large enough that I'm not close enough in contact with all those people to ask if they want me to expose them out there like that. Otherwise I would share like the little clips from these and the trailer, like this movie we did with this girl script. There's a trailer for it on YouTube and everything, and it says my name, and I had long hair, and I'm wearing a trench coat the whole time. It's like it would be great stuff to share, but people get a kick out of it. But I just don't want to make anybody mad in real life.
And then just moving on to our next question now. So, who were some of your inspirations? Who do you look up to now in the film criticism world? Of course, we talked about this a little at the beginning of the show, but did you kind of want to elaborate on that a bit in regards to this question?
Yeah, so growing up, it was Siskel and Ebert were the two guys. If you liked movies in the 80s and 90s, Siskel and Ebert were the dominant force. And then in the mid-90s, was on a youth trip, and one of my buddies brought Leonard Maltin's movie guide. And I was, Leonard Maltin, what's this? It's this book. I've got one right here. Not a little bit.
Ooh, it's all torn up and everything.
Yeah, this is the 2013 edition. It's the kid probably did that. But just this huge book of movie reviews. I was like, this is amazing. And so starting in about 1995, 96, it was like every Christmas my mom would get me the new one, and then I would all year long read it and check out the new reviews and circle the movies I'd seen, and that's did that for years. And also, other thing about Leonard Maltin is the last version of Star Wars that came out before the special edition. So the last version released before the special editions of Star Wars, Leonard Maltin did a series of interviews with George Lucas on them. And in those interviews, he discussed the special editions were coming out in a few years, which blew our minds. And he talked about that he was writing the prequels, which blew our minds. That doesn't sound as interesting now because online movie news is what we do, and it's so prominent. So as soon as something is happening, everybody knows about it. But back in 1995, 96, when these VHS tapes came out, that's not the way the world worked. You had like monthly publications that if you bought Entertainment Weekly, you read that one page, you knew what George Lucas was up to, but otherwise you didn't. And so then watching these copies of Star Wars and him just saying, yeah, we're doing more of these, like as this 13-year-old, 14-year-old kid or whatever, just was mind-blowing. And Leonard Maltin was the guy that did that. Mm-hmm. And so then Leonard Maltin was a huge one. And even I didn't think about this until it was like, the last couple of years I started even process through it. But so he writes these little mini reviews. Roger Ebert, he write a 2-page review, but Leonard Maltin, it's like a paragraph. And at some point in time, I realized, like, wait, that's what my rankings are. The way that I read this, like, oh, what does he think about this?
Vintage rankings.
Yeah, it's vintage rankings, exactly. And I was like, what did he score this? And I get mad and I get worked up. But they're like, it's a 1-minute review that it only takes you about a minute to read the review, and that's what my rankings are designed to be. And it's like, oh wow, that changed my life more than I thought. And I actually met him 4 years ago this week at Fantastic Fest, film festival here in town. That I would have been there this year, but it was just all the COVID requirements, and it made the whole thing tedious, and so I didn't want to go this year. But he's probably there this week, and I could have met him again. So he's another one. And then when it comes to YouTube, I'm spending way too much time on Leonard Maltin. Must be in a chatty mood. When it comes to YouTube, John Campea was a big on-ramp for me into the movie online space. His precursor to Movie Talk was called For Your Consideration, and that's what I started watching, and that brought me into... So I was watching Movie Talk, MC Movie Talk and then Collider Movie Talk, from episode number 1, day 1, week 1, because I'd been watching his other stuff before that. And somewhere in that time frame, of course, discovered all the obvious ones, Jeremy Johns, Chris Stuckman, and those sorts of things inspired me. More recent things that I found interesting, the pitch meetings with Ryan George. They're really funny, but they actually have a very strong understanding of screenwriting and storytelling. And that his observational skills of all the tricks that screenwriters are doing to try and connect the dots is very good at pointing out the flaw and presenting it as a setup for a punchline.
Of course, and now let's get on to the last question here. And I know this one might be a bit tedious because everyone asks you this, but how do you become a Rotten Tomatoes certified critic?
You check your Instagram inbox, and someone congratulates you on being a Rotten Tomatoes certified critic. You respond back, I'm not a Rotten Tomatoes certified critic, and tell them they're a moron, and then check Rotten Tomatoes and discover that you actually are a Rotten Tomatoes certified critic. That was the way I became one.
Very simple, very awesome.
Yeah, so I was fished. I wasn't fished. Rotten Tomatoes fished by someone. I was fraudulently added on Rotten Tomatoes, and someone applied as me.
Wow.
Claiming to be me, created a Gmail name, Sean Chandler at talks@gmail, something like that, submitted my name, my YouTube channel, my picture, interacted back and forth for several days with Rotten Tomatoes, and the person got accepted.
It's a crime of passion.
Yeah,
it's a crime of passion. It's
in the way Rotten Tomatoes works is it's not like they have to... Rotten Tomatoes pulls from Sean Chandler Talks About my YouTube channel. So you can't use my name to fraudulently get on there and write your own reviews. You have to pull it from my YouTube channel. And so it was me, but I was not in contact with Rotten Tomatoes until this person messaged me on Instagram like, hey man, congratulations on being Rotten Tomatoes. I was like, I'm not on Rotten Tomatoes. What are you talking about? And then I Google searched and I was like, wait, what's going on here? How am I on Rotten Tomatoes? What is this? And so I literally had to message one of my friends that's on Rotten Tomatoes and I asked them, hey, do you have a contact? I need to figure out what's going on here. And they gave me their contact. I emailed this person, and the lady like, hey, I just found out I'm on Rotten Tomatoes. I don't know what's going on here, but we've never spoken before. We never talked before, and that's my channel. The quotes, those are from my videos. That's me, but we've never talked. And the lady responded back. She goes, I'm not sure what you're talking about. We've been emailing for 2 or 3 weeks. And I had a little moment where I was like, do I have cognitive decline? Did I respond to an email in the middle of the night and I forgot, oh no, what is happening right now? Is this real?
This reminds me of the twist in the Shyamalan movie, The Visit, where there's that moment, spoiler alert, where you realize, oh, those aren't the real grandparents.
Yeah.
It's like, ugh.
Yeah, and so then the lady's like, hey, can you prove that you're the real you? I was like, I mean, I'll make a video on my channel right now with me waving, saying your name, whatever we got to do, let's do this. And she's like, well, we don't need to do that, but if you can do a couple things, verified it, and then I got control of it. So that's the simple process by how you get on Rotten Tomatoes. Okay, you're probably asking for more helpful advice than that, because that's a very weird story that happened to tie into something very important to my professional life. So if you go to the Rotten Tomatoes webpage, it says at the bottom of the page where you can apply for Rotten Tomatoes. And just, how do you become Rotten Tomatoes certified? Well, you apply on their webpage, and they're just at the bottom. You click the apply button, and it'll tell you when the application process is open. So that's how you do it. It's that simple. There's nothing fancy to it. But like people, they want to get on Rotten Tomatoes because it's like a badge of honor, or gives them credibility, or to drive traffic, and so I've had people that they haven't even posted their first review yet and ask me, how do you get on Rotten Tomatoes? Or they just started posting 2 weeks ago. How do I get on Rotten Tomatoes? And some of those questions I find a little bit offensive. They're frustrating. Because that was like, this is something I've dedicated hundreds, thousands of hours to, and you started a week ago and you're asking how do you get on Rotten Tomatoes? Like, you're asking the wrong question as your starting point. But so if you go to their webpage, they'll say you have to have 2 years straight of reviews posted showing professionalism. And I think the number they quote on their webpage is you have to have like 30,000, 20,000 followers, unless you represent a underrepresented group of people. So I have friends of mine, and so I have a friend of mine that has over 50,000 subscribers, been posting since 6 weeks after I did, and he's been turned down multiple times by Rotten Tomatoes. So when people message me one weekend and like, hey, how do I get on Rotten Tomatoes? You're getting ahead of yourself. I know some other people that they're reviewing movies representing specific racial groups or different minority groups in different ways. And that's kind of part of the identity of their channel. And Rotten Tomatoes is very interested in people like that represent different groups of people or cover niche things that other people aren't covering. 40-year-old white guy covering Marvel movies, they've got a lot of those. They don't need more of me. Like, I got on the website because I have a lot of followers. That's how I got on there. But I think one of my friends, like, she covers Hallmark movies. There's just not a lot of people reviewing Hallmark movies, and so she was just like prime for them to be like, yes, you can help us get more reviews for this thing that most people aren't covering. So the simple answer is review for over 2 years, grow a large audience, and be professional. And ideally have something about what you cover or who you are that serves something underserved. Don't appeal to the most broad audience be the most oversaturated type of person covering this content as I am. That's the worst way to get on there.
Of course. So that's going to be it for this segment of the show. Now we're going to move on to some movie news. We've all been salivating at the thought of talking about movies, TV, that kind of stuff. So first off, we're going to talk about the new Apple TV show, Foundation. Foundation is basically a show about the kind of a mathematician played by Jared Harris is basically he predicts the fall of an empire that's reigned throughout the galaxy for thousands of years, and he predicts the fall of this empire, and they're dealing with kind of the ramifications of that. So have you guys gotten a chance to check out this show yet? I know Nyolo has. Sean, have you gotten a chance yet?
I haven't seen it. I haven't seen a trailer.
Okay.
I actually don't know anything about it.
Okay, got it. So I'll try to sell you on it. So I've actually seen the first 2 episodes of the show, because mostly as a backup for Dune, because I'm really excited for Dune, like the majority of the world. And I'm like, okay, if this winds up disappointing me, at least I'll have Foundation. And that's kind of the case here. Foundation, I think, is a really good show. The production value, I mean, I was talking to Nyolo about it before we started the show, is tremendous. The visuals, the costumes, everything about it, the scale of the story. Lee Pace, if you loved his performance as Ronan the Accuser, just love the character. I have a soft spot for the character. You'll love him in this because he's basically playing the same guy, but without the blue makeup. So he's great in the show. Agnolo, what are your thoughts on it?
The first thing that came to me is I'm like Sean. I still remember watching things in Portugal, TV shows could never get to the scale of what we got to the cinema, and that was the big difference. And watching this show now is it's the same. Let's forget about it. The visuals on this, like you said, it reminded me of some things I saw in the trailer of Dune. That's how good it is. The story for me didn't really work. It's I think it's more of the same, and I think they also trying to get a little bit on the bandwagon of Dune, trying to make it very similar. But it didn't do it for me. But I only watched the first episode, so I need to watch it a bit more to see if the story gets to me. But I kind of can see where it's going. It's like it's just trying to every episode just trying to be bigger and bigger and bigger. And I think sometimes shows forget it's all about the characters, and when you go big in terms of the visuals, sometimes that gets diluted, and that's what I felt it was going. I wanted to know more, but I'll give it a go to at least to see the first 2-3 episodes to see if it's something that I would enjoy. But visually, I was thinking, how can they do any better than this anywhere?
Yeah.
Exactly. So, and Apple TV, when I first saw the trailer for all the shows they were putting out, like a lot of other people, I'm like, ugh, this is a joke. I have Amazon Prime, I have Netflix, I have Hulu. Why do I need Apple TV? But then I'm seeing the trailers for their new stuff. Like they have a show called Invasion, which is kind of like a spin on War of the Worlds, at least I think, with Sam Neill in it. That also looks really good and grand in scale. Of course, they have Ted Lasso, which we'll be talking about a little later in the show. But yeah, they're really pushing out some good stuff. And then the second show we're going to talk about, which also debuted yesterday, was Midnight Mass, the new show that made by the creator of Haunting of Hill House and The Haunting of Bly Manor, director of Dr. Sleep, Mike Flanagan. So, Agnolo and Sean, have you gotten a chance to check this out, the trailer? Do you know anything about the show yet?
I haven't. I'm pretty swamped because so many big things are coming out in October.
Yeah.
That I'm trying to do all these rankings for October things, and it's stuff that I announced going back a year and a half ago, and the way the universe played out, all these movies ended up getting delayed and got dropped in the same month. And so I just have all these things that's been sucking up all my time. And so otherwise I would be interested in it because he's established himself as a top horror storyteller.
For sure. So all 7 episodes dropped. I haven't actually seen Bly Manor or Hill House. I've just seen Dr. Sleep, which I actually loved. It was my favorite horror movie of 2019, which of course was a year packed with a bunch of horror movies. And so I really loved the first episode of this show. A lot of character, like Agnolo was talking about. So yeah, I'm really interested to see where it goes. Let's move on to the next show. Of course, possibly our weekly rant. If Guy was here, he would be shaking his head right now. But of course, it's the 7th episode of What If. Sean and Agnolo, did you get a chance to check this out?
I did.
Yes.
Sean, I'll go to you first.
This is probably my least favorite episode of the show up to this point. I thoroughly enjoyed quite a few of the episodes up to this point in time. I think they've found new and interesting angles to take things. I watched this one and I went, of all the things you could do, of all the directions to take it, I get you want to go lighthearted, you want to do something a little bit fun. I get it, but it's just feels too filler, too hollow, where it's literally Thor just wants to party, and that leads to problems. Okay, he's Andrew WK. He's Jake Paul, as the comment section says. Like, okay, that's one of your 9 what ifs that you went with. Of like, you brainstormed on the walls, hundreds of potential what ifs, and then you went. That's it right there. That's it. Party
That's
Thor.
it.
He just throws an awesome rave on Earth.
Agnolo?
I've been defending What If every week against Alex, but this week
it's a constant battle. It's a battle that's been going on. Darth Vader versus Luke Skywalker level between Agnolo and What If.
But this week I just can't defend it. I completely agree with Sean, and for like a comic book fan that read What If in the comic book pages, there's so many stories.
Those are a bunch of the ones with those comic stories. Those are the ones I was reading too back in the day. Yeah,
exactly. And there's so many stories that they could have done that are so more interesting. And it was really bad. And then in the end, when they do, spoiler alert, that Vision Ultron bullshit.
It was cool. It was cool though.
It made no sense. It was just the last nail. And I watched someone making a joke today about it, and Captain Marvel, she never shows up when all this shit is happening, but then Thor is partying and she decides she needs to get involved. And that was exactly how I felt. Like, nothing made sense. It was ridiculous.
Yeah.
I thought the animation and there was just things that I just like all these characters were showing up for the party.
Right.
It was just like because they want to put him there. Nothing
Yeah.
made sense on this movie. So
Well, like if you played it out, like some of these characters, like Nebula's here, Drax is here.
Yeah.
What's the implication of like? Is your point that because Thor's been partying, the timeline has been so dramatically changed everywhere else that Drax's family wasn't killed and Nebula's not bitter about her sister and Thanos? Like, is that what you're saying, or did you just throw them in here? You didn't stop and think about any of this. You just went, who's every fun character we can throw at the party? Which seems an awful lot like that's all this is.
Yeah, they just try and put everyone there. It was, I know, I don't know. This one I need to agree that it should be erased from the timeline. No, but this is the one. This is the one because even the ones I didn't like, they didn't kind of offended me. It's like it's an anthology, so I'm prepared to have bad episodes that I won't like, but I can see some other people like. I don't see anyone liking this.
At the end of a lot of these bad episodes, what will happen is that the world is basically they signal that the world is basically done, like in the zombie episode, which I didn't like, which had Thanos, basically taking over the world. Which with a lot of these, it's like if you didn't like the episode, that's fine because the world is going to be erased because it's the end of the world. I just find that just kind of a fun little idea. And then the Ultron thing we were talking about. Great visually, looked really cool. Don't know why it was there, so I don't want to reiterate what you guys have said. I agree with everything. So now we're going to move on to buy or sell. We're going to go through a list of topics, that kind of movie news topics that occurred within the last week, and we're going to talk about if we would buy that news or sell that news. So, of course, movie news of this week is not complete without talking about the biggest story that just destroyed the internet. The internet was wiped out by this news. It was the news of the Super Mario Bros. Cast. So, Sean, I'll go to you first. What are your thoughts on the castings?
Do I say buy or sell at the beginning of this, or do we do that after?
Yeah, sure. Whatever you want. Either way.
I am big selling this. This feels entirely like the marketing department of Illumination is running the show, and they went, who are all the names that we can put in a trailer to say, look, we got all these names, and it's like the generic list of people that do voice work all the time.
That's true.
And it's not that I dislike them, but like Chris Pratt, like, is he the voice of every male lead now? Like, it's like the cast of Lion King plus Chris Pratt. Like, what are we doing here? And none of them feel like obvious connections. Like, when you think like an Italian stereotype, I immediately think Chris Pratt. No. Like Mario is such a distinct Italian stereotype. There are 1,000 roles you can throw Chris Pratt and I'll go, yeah, cool. He's fun. He'll do great at that. And then there's roles that you're like, well, that's not an obvious fit. An Italian stereotype would be one of them. But he's the guy that when you're doing animated movies or Lego, Onward, like he's one of the go-to guys for family animation. Boom, throw him. He's making his way through all the animation studios. We have Pixar, we got whatever was doing Lego, and now we've got Illumination. And so I saw this and I went, that's a bunch of names of people I really like that I don't think fit any of these. They're just trying to get big names. So sell.
The only one I think he fits is Jack Black. Is the only one that I can see. Jack Black is the only one I can see. But I completely agree with Sean in terms of like Chris Pratt was the biggest problem for me because like I just don't see unless he's gonna do that voice that everyone is kind of like it's the joke and does that hey Mario and it's gonna sound ridiculous. It's not gonna work because his voice does not fit the character. So. I'm with Sean. I will sell this because I just don't see it fitting the characters. Right. They're all great, mm-hmm. But they don't fit the characters. I don't see them being even what's her name from the Queen's Gambit. Yeah, even her. I don't see her as being the princess in distress and like and stuff like that. It's I don't know. I just wanted to see more of the characters fitting the voice. So I'm with Sean. I'm selling this.
I'll sell this as well. Again, don't want to repeat what you guys said, but I will defend the Jack Black casting. Like
Jack Black, yeah.
There's someone tweeted out in the middle of 2020 when they announced this project, and I don't remember who the name of the person is that voices Mario in the video games, but go, I guarantee you we're not going to get him voicing Mario. Instead, they're going to get someone generic like Chris Pratt just to put his name in the trailer. And it's a tweet from a year and a half ago that's out there that's been making the rounds on the internet. It was like, they called it. They called it.
Good.
All right, let's move on to the next topic. So we're going to talk about now Venom, Let There Be Carnage. Of course, when Sean was talking about big movies in October, arguably the first big movie coming out in October is, of course, Venom, Let There Be Carnage, coming out next week. I think I'll be seeing on the 30th, which is a Thursday, I believe, but it publicly, to the main public, comes out on Friday, or generally comes out on Friday. Sean, I'll go to you first. What are your predictions, both critically and financially, for this film in its first week?
So I see it Tuesday, and I rewatched the first one last night. So I'm trying to get my and I bought the Eddie Brock Fortnite skin last night. Most importantly, so I'm doing my part I'm doing my part to get amped up for this. Critically, I expect it'll do a little bit better than the last one. The last one was pretty torn up by critics. I think this one will be a bit better, simply because the first one was just so weird and clunky in the way it told its story. And it took too long to get to Eddie and Venom, which was the best part of the movie. Yeah. And so if this one starts with them, and then even in the final battle of the first one, it's a black symbiote versus a dark gray semi-black one at nighttime on a black bridge. It's just even the final battle, you couldn't see what was going on. So even just having Carnage being red, I think there's a few things that set this one up to just do a little bit better. I wouldn't expect it to be fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, but I wouldn't be surprised if we're in the 50s. Something like that. That's just significantly better than the first one was received, but it's not going to be great. These are very much cinematic fast food. They are appealing to a specific group of people that like the idea of a superhero that eats dogs and goes, "Oh, look, people, tasty treats." Like that's who this is appealing to. How to do financially? I don't know, man. Box office predictions during the pandemic. I would guess it'll do better than Shang-Chi opened.
Really?
That'll be my prediction.
That's bold.
Just because the first one, it had a built-in audience. It's a much more established character. So maybe that's what I'll say. But it's tough to know because also the response to Venom was pretty split. Even critics mostly didn't like it, and then audiences weren't crazy about it, but at the same time, it made a lot more money than they were expecting, and so it's tough to even interpret some of that. But I don't know. I feel like there's buzz for it, even if it's morbid curiosity of how bad it'll be. It has buzz, and I don't know. I don't remember where Shang-Chi actually opens. I'd have to have numbers in front of me. It's tough.
Yeah.
I used to have much more confident predictions before the world shut down.
Of course. Agnolo?
Yeah, I don't think he'll open as big as Shang-Chi, but I think he'll do well, like, especially because of all the buzz of the after credit scene. I think a lot of people will go and watch it just to watch the after credit scene because the buzz around it, it's like it's going to blow your mind and whatever. So I think there's a lot of people that are fans of Spider-Man that want to go and see the after credit scene because they think it's related with something with Spider-Man. I'm one of the reviewing movies is all about expectation also. And the thing is, when I watched Venom, the first one, I'm a big fan of the comic books. It's one of my favorite characters, Venom. And then when I saw Venom on Spider-Man 3 of Sam Raimi, I almost cried. So when I saw Venom, I thought it was a step up. Like I was a little bit happier that I got, because I think, like Sean said, that's like the relationship between Venom and Eddie Brock was really fun. So I kind of enjoyed the movie. It has a lot of flaws, but I enjoyed it more than I thought. I don't think I'm going to enjoy this one as much, to be honest, because of the trailers. I'm not a big fan of what I saw in the trailers, but I can see it having a little bit more of a better review of the critics and Rotten Tomatoes. But in terms of the box office, it's like Sean said, it's like, what's good anymore? Like, because like Suicide Squad was great, and look how he did in the box office. It's not something we can predict. It doesn't have to do with the quality of the movie. It doesn't have to do with anything. It has to do with like how is the pandemic that week? Are we gonna get news
Mhm.
that it's gonna be more?
Mhm.
It's
I
nothing related with how good it is, because
I
Suicide Squad deserved a lot better and it didn't.
sorry to cut you off there. I will say with the Suicide Squad, it's a bit different just because the HBO Max simultaneous release. Like for example, I saw Suicide Squad on opening day, and then after I came out of the movie, I turned my phone on, and then Guy, who's my usual co-host, he texted me and he said, "Oh, I'm watching the Suicide Squad." I came out of the movie at like 8 p.m. It's not like they waited at 12 a.m. or 3 a.m.
Yeah.
At night when they usually do that with a lot of their releases. Like Disney does that with a lot of their TV show releases. So they did it the day of. And so the HBO Max, and that's something to take into account here, rather than compared to like Shang-Chi, for example, which we just got a comment, which is the highest grossing film of 2021 now, and also didn't have that simultaneous release.
Yeah, but they
So
did the same with King Kong, and King Kong still did great in the box office. It's a question of like,
didn't that have the okay, sorry.
no,
Never mind, never mind.
it's a question if I'm willing to go to the cinema or not, because I think everyone that like saw King Kong knew this is something I have to watch in the cinema. But if you're gonna be like having a lot of news around it that it's gonna risk your life, this and that, like
Delta
sorry.
spiked like a week or two before Suicide Squad.
Yeah, exactly.
Hmm.
So we don't
Yeah.
know what's gonna happen until Venom comes out. So, but I don't think it will. It will do. It's not gonna do anything close to what the first one did, because the first one was just like everyone was so surprised about the amount of money it made. So I don't think it's gonna. But the thing is, no one expects it. If it does half of it, it's gonna be a hit. That's the new world we live in.
All right, let's move on to the next topic now. So the Netflix has a new global event called, I believe it's pronounced Tudum, might be Tudum, I'm not sure,
Tudum.
but it's Tudum. Yeah.
So
So
it's supposed to mirror the sound.
The sound of
of
the,
when the
I see. Oh, I
Netflix
didn't
end.
get that.
Tudum.
Now it's a lot cooler of a title than I thought.
Did you
before,
watch the
but-
trailer for it? With all the celebrities?
No.
So if
I
you watch
just
the
saw
trailer
list of
for it, it's more obvious. If
Okay.
you just read it,
Okay.
you're like, what on earth? Why did they come up with such a stupid name? But it
Yeah.
was based around the noise that it makes whenever you open Netflix. And so if
Yeah.
you watch the trailer for it, it has like The Rock and Ryan Reynolds and Gal Gadot all going dum dum, trying to make the sound. It's still not a great idea because most people read headlines rather than watch a trailer for it. So especially if it's watch the trailer for Tudum. What? Why would I do that? What are you talking about? But that's what it is.
So they're going to reveal information about a load of their shows. We're going to talk about one specifically because I know we're all fans of the show. We all watch the show. I particularly chose this show to talk about, which is Cobra Kai. They're going to be revealing information about season 4 of Cobra Kai. Hopefully they'll reveal some more information about release dates, stuff like that. Agnolo and Sean, I know you guys are Cobra Kai fans. Sean, you've done some reviews about Cobra Kai. Agnolo, you want to start off on this one?
I just want to keep saying I'm a bit worried if they continue on adding more. I don't know what else. I love the idea. I love how they did up to now, but I think it's one of those shows that if you milk it too much, you're gonna ruin it. What a great idea it was, and that's what I'm a little bit more on the fence with another season and we almost saw everyone, unless they bring what's her name, like that did the Karate Kids movie.
Hilary Swank.
Yeah, unless they bring
gosh.
Hillary, unless they bring her, I'm not seeing a lot more characters they can bring in, and it's like I'm just a bit worried. But it's still a lot of fun, and it's like for me, it's still one of the best kind of ideas that someone used the old show to create a new one. It's still up there for me, but I'm just a bit worried where it's going.
Sean?
So before I talk Cobra Kai, on the Tudum live stream is going on right now, and The Rock just introduced
wow.
a new trailer for Red, whatever his movie is with
Notice. Red
Red
Notice.
Red
Red
Notice.
Notice.
Yeah. I should know it since I'm watching the trailer while we're talking, but yeah. So, or I guess maybe it's a clip that they're showing from it right now at this exact moment. Just trying to see what they're up to. Anyway, yeah, I'm actually very much aligned with what you just said. I've been loving the first 3 seasons, but with the plots that they have set up and the tension, the conflicts, character dynamics, to me, this feels like this should be the last season.
Yeah.
Because if you look at like Johnny and Daniel are at odds, and then separate schools, and then come together to fight the real person that was the villain behind all of it. Like, that's the story.
Yeah.
And so then when you're like, oh, but we've already renewed it for 2 more seasons after this, and you're like, I voiced my concern whenever they first announced that they were doing more seasons, and people were like, but I've loved the show up to this point in time. It's like, right. And they're smarter than me as writers, so it's entirely possible that they will have something better to do, some idea of where envision something beyond this. But based off what they have written, with the way stories work of like setup, payoff, growth, it just feels like there's an obvious landing. Like the thing they're building towards, you've put it right there in front of us. It's about 10 episodes away at this tournament. And if you're saying the ending is actually 30 episodes away,
yeah,
and we're only this is only the midpoint, that scares me. And all these people are like, yeah, but they'll probably lose the tournament and have to make a comeback. Cause like, right, that's called stretching it out. Like, right, Daniel and Johnny will have a falling out. Right, these aren't like great ideas. This is like the most obvious thing you can do. Do they win or do they lose? Do they stay friends or do they have a falling out on this melodrama? Well, it's a melodrama, so they're gonna have a falling out. If you stretch that out for 30 episodes to get to the conclusion of what they're doing here, as well as the simple fact that when you have high schoolers and you run your show for 6 years, they're 24 by the time the show ends. And if you watch the Karate Kid 3, the person that has fought aging the best on planet Earth is Ralph Macchio. And even him, when he was playing a 30-year-old, 18-year-old, it was like, I don't think he looks like he's 18 anymore. Like, I think age is catching up with him a little bit. And so this idea that the whole cast of this show are going to be 25-year-olds, and some of them are older than that. Some of them already are in their mid-20s.
Yeah.
They're going to be playing 29-year-old, 18-year-olds. It just gets so nervous when they talk about stretching this one out. And I thought they've done a great job up to this point in time, and that's why it makes me so nervous. And that's the problem with TV shows, is that they want to keep going. When it's like right there, do the Breaking Bad thing, end it with as much story as you have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they're bringing in Terry Silver, which is like the last big character that they needed that was kind of left out. Of course, the Hilary Swank one, but I'm talking about the main.
She's not tied to
yeah, exactly.
Daniel LaRusso.
But yeah, the Terry Silver thing. Of course, the first teaser promoted the character of Terry. So, I mean, I have a soft spot for Karate Kid Part 3. I have a soft spot for the character of Terry Silver, just because the pure absurdity of the character. And then also, as the show keeps going, it starts to lose its realism, which we saw mainly in season 3 when they're like breaking into people's houses, committing felonies, committing like legitimate crimes. So if you go on for too long, if we're at a point right now where they're committing legitimate crimes, what are they going to be doing in seasons 4 and 5 that we haven't even seen yet? Which I'm worried about.
Maybe that's the twist. We're gonna see them in jail and fighting in jail. That's gonna be the twist for season 4 and 5.
I wouldn't be surprised.
I just hate when shows do this. It's like they have one TV show with a great idea. One of the worst ones for me was Prison Break. I don't know if Alex probably never saw it, but Sean probably saw it. But Prison Break, even in the name, it's about getting out of prison. And they get out of prison, and they do 4 more seasons of them out of prison with the same and then they get the guy back in prison so he can break out again. And I was like, oh, you know what? This is just ridiculous. So,
and that's the problem of TV, is that you have these ideas that the premise only goes for so much, and then you have to keep going. And that's where I think some of these shows shoot themselves in the foot. And they like, even Cobra Kai season 3, when they start having John Kreese doing literal Mortal Kombat, like over a pit of snakes and stuff, it's like, okay, like I get bringing in Vietnam and like he's traumatized because of stuff that happened here, and there's some twists in it. It's like, oh, it wasn't what we thought it was good, but like he does a literal fatality where he punches a guy into a pit of snakes, like. Where you're going too far, you're crossing the line to where, am I watching the original Karate Kid, thinking like, yeah, that character right there, that evil karate dojo, he fought in Mortal Kombat and punched a guy into a pit of snakes that ate the guy alive. We're going too far.
But let's move on now to our last topic now. So we're going to go over. So it has been announced that there will be a Lost Boys movie in the works at Warner Brothers. So Sean, I'll start with you now. Are you a fan of the original Lost Boys?
I've actually never seen Lost Boys. So it's one of
Okay.
those things I've missed in my viewing history that I've just never seen Lost Boys. And so in the one sense, I can't chime in too much with a particularly intelligent, specific take on this one. In general, I'm not someone that gets too angry about remakes because in my mind, the original is still there. And there's not very many examples where the inferior remake actually negates people's memory of the original that's better.
Yeah.
People remember the original classics, and RoboCop 2013, people were like, yeah, remember when they did like a RoboCop remake and it went nowhere? That's what they talk about it, but it doesn't take away the Paul Verhoeven original. And if this one is garbage, if this one misses the mark, which it probably will, you don't lose much. But there's remakes that the fan base does embrace. The Evil Dead remake from 8-10 years ago or whatever, the horror fan base seems to really like that movie.
Agnolo, I'll go to you.
Yeah, I'm a fan of the original, but I don't think there's no reason to remake it. I'm with Sean. It doesn't bother me if there's a remake. I don't want it. I just don't want to watch it. If there's people that want to watch it and happy about it, fine. But the thing is, like the story in itself, it's like it's just one of those that you are using the name because it still has some brand recognition, because it's not like the story is so original. It's a bunch of kids that go and live in a town that has vampires. Okay, that's like kind of it. And it works very much because he has that feeling of the 80s of it's more the look that it wouldn't work today. So what they're gonna do with it and with that story, I don't see the point, but hey, if they want to make it, make it. But I don't think it's going to be anything unless someone has a really clever idea behind it. But I don't think it's going to be anything that's going to come from the original. It's just using the name.
For sure. So that is going to end it now, folks, for this show, for this special. Sorry, Sean, what were you going to say?
They just dropped, I believe, the Stranger Things trailer. I think it just dropped. So there's
so we definitely have to go now.
Yeah, I think that just happened. I was trying not to look, but I was looking just enough to see if a thing was happening. So that might have just happened.
All right, so that gives us an extra excuse to end the show now. So thank you all for joining us. Before we leave, Agnolo, I'll go to you first. Where can everyone find you?
People can find me on Instagram with my daughter. We have our Instagram with reviews, lists, and everything that we do together. So people can go and check it out there on Instagram. It's Agnolo Movies blog, and that's pretty much it.
And Sean, where can everyone find you? Your channel? You can plug all 5 of your channels if you want. I'm not sure you're gonna.
Did that.
You're gonna.
So if you want to find me on my main channel, you just look up Sean Chandler on YouTube. You either find a 25-year-old football player or a guy that looks like me that talks about movies. It's the guy that looks like me and is talking about movies.
Of course. So Sean, thank you for joining us today. It's been real special. Thank you for coming on today. It's been great talking to you. If you haven't already, please like the video, subscribe, hit that bell icon to get notified on all our latest cinema-related content. Make sure to follow all the individuals in the video today on their respective accounts, subscribe to their channels, stuff like that. The links for those will be down in the description below. Thank you for watching, everybody. Ciao, and go watch that Stranger Things trailer. Get out.